Oh, Nate, thanks for being on here, man.
We have been
Very excited.
so excited to do this interview. I don't want to, show our cards too early, but I'm not wearing pants.
Yeah,
That's all I'm
Oh
saying.
wow! All right,
you'd
I
be
like it.
showing something
Okay.
different than cards at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Okay, so Nate, the way we're just gonna come in hot because you look like you're ready. You got your hair is looking great. You look like
I did it. Yeah, I
you
fixed it up.
you did it,
Yeah,
isn't
I
it?
woke up like this. I just started going like, yeah,
You know
You
what? It's
only
funny
sleep
that
on
I
that
love.
side.
yeah,
You know what
yeah. It's not good.
I love about dad life is that you just needed to say I did it, and I knew what that meant. That meant I took a shower this morning.
Yeah,
That's all
Yep.
you
yeah,
needed to say. I was like,
yeah,
yeah, of
yeah,
course you
yeah,
did. This was a
yeah.
shower day. It's Wednesday. Okay, so Nate, what we start with Dadville is we start with what we call the brag sheet. So it's kind of like here's what Nate's out there doing in the world. Look how awesome this guy is. That's basically what it is. It's just setting you up to win.
All right, I
Um,
like it.
and so we're I like it. I hope you do. Speak awkward. Uh, so I want to start the last paragraph of this is really amazing, and I kind of want to start there. Nate was featured as one of Esquire's best new comedians by Jim Gaffigan, who is a very funny man. One of Mark Maron's comedians to watch in Rolling Stone. One of Variety's 10 comics to watch for 2015 as number one on Vulture's 50 comedians you should know in 2015. His debut one-hour special, Full Time Magic, premiered on Comedy Central that spring, followed by his debut album, Yelled At by a Clown, which is funny and terrifying, by the way, which reached number one on iTunes comedy charts and remained built on Billboard's top 10 comedy charts for weeks. We just watched, and not to mention that you've had the two Netflix specials it talks about here, which the stand-ups, which I did like the deep dive because I've known about your comedy for a while. John and I are big fans, and we think you're very funny. But uh, I did like my wife and I did like the deep dive the other night where we literally had like a Nate night, which I'm going to
Yeah,
trademark that, but where
yeah,
we watched where we watched everything, and it was so funny. But the stand was great. You have a 30-minute set there, and then the Tennessee Kid, which I mean, I have to say it, the Olivia bit. I may go in my top 10 funniest bits of all times. I
oh,
mean
I'll take it.
that that I don't know what the rest of them would be. I'd need to think about it, but that one is
You only
really.
have four other ones, but I'm still at number 10, and you're like, oh, there's a big gap between that.
Well, I just want to leave for
Yeah,
other good ones that may come later. Uh, it's so great. The Tennessee Kid's so funny. And now, by the time people are listening to this, which we watched last night, and giggles abound, which I'm going to be honest with you, helicopter bit maybe to me, you having to deal with the helicopter might have been secretly my favorite part of that whole bit with the new
yeah.
Netflix special.
I was nervous about that being in there, like just hoping that it came across because it was, it was like such a unique, like with the special, it's like you don't want to do the special and like it feels like it's a COVID special, and it feels like it can only really live in this one time. But it was like with all the helicopter stuff, it was like able to show, I don't know, make it like kind of real. Like it was
Yeah.
like, this is really it. I don't
Yeah.
know what to do. There's
And
nothing we
plus,
can't
It
you
do.
was
like to
great.
do specials in dangerous places. Do you know what I mean? It's
That's
a
what we do.
flex.
Yeah.
That's what you
Yeah.
do.
That's what we did. I think it was a police chase, is what we were told. That's why there
Oh
was
my
so many
gosh, are you
helicopters.
serious?
We found out after because it was a lot of helicopters, and it was like, God, this is a big problem. And someone was like, there was a police chase going on, and that's why they
Did you
were.
find out that the suspect was at the show?
He's trying to get into the show. He's not a fan, to be honest, though. Like
He was a heckler.
he doesn't get it. He doesn't. He goes, I don't get what he does. Is what he
Yeah.
yelled at us. That was just
He's like, I'm gonna risk it out here rather than
yeah,
hide in here.
yeah,
I mean, John and I talk about this all the time. We're both musicians, and we talk about it all the time. Like, if we could meet our great grandfather, like how he'd be like, "Tell me again what it is." We just write songs and we sing, and people pay us. And he's like, "So you never have to sweat?" And you're like, "Well, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it's like just how
No,
much you'd
there are
be like,
summer
God."
shows, outside.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Outside,
fair.
yeah,
That's
it's
fair.
hot.
But I
Yeah,
could see like my great great granddad yelling that from the crowd if he came back,
yeah,
like, do a real job.
yeah,
This is a
yeah,
real
yeah.
job.
Yeah,
Please
this
stop.
is yeah.
So one of the things we kind of want to warn you, like, we've had amazing guests on. We're It's been such a fun thing, but this is like we almost felt like we needed to apologize ahead of time because you're the first like stand-up comic, and not just the first stand-up comic, but a really good, successful, funny stand-up comic. Uh, And so John and I have been really excited about this. So you may feel that and like it. You may feel that and think, oh, whoops, my internet went out and we never can get you again. But we at least wanted to, send
The
a
whole
shot
thing
across
just
the bow.
might be uncomfortable.
Yes, which we're okay with.
We're
I'm
just
okay
saying.
with.
And I'm
good.
gonna. Speaking of discomfort, I'm gonna come in with some hot discomfort
Speaking
right now.
of discomfort.
I lead a lot of sentences with that, but I have to say, I've never seen anyone in the public eye or in the private eye get better and better looking as you age. I don't know what is happening, and
the glow up is strong.
It is. Yeah. It is. It's amazing. I wish I'm bummed that this is a podcast because I'm watching it happen right now. You look better than you did 5 minutes ago when we started this interview. What?
It's just it's the.
Is it just the showering or what's happening?
Showering, gigantic. It was some of it's just like in New York. It was when you first started in New York. It was just kind of a zoo. It was like my college. And so you're out. I was going to bed at 5 a.m. I mean, this is 9 years of this and eating fast food. Not that I still eat fast food, but you're eating it. You're like only eating fast food and you're only like staying out and partying with your friends till 5 a.m., getting no sleep, going to do shows every night, traveling on the road. That kind of just like beat up lifestyle. And then so I kind of like reeled that in. And then you kind of get on the road and now you're kind of in your own little world. And so all that kind of goes away. I'm way more conscious of what I need to eat. I still eat very badly, but it's at least the thought is there that you're like, all right, maybe. My wife I had waffles this morning. She took one away from me. I was pretty upset about it. I had 3.
I was going to say, it depends on how many you started with.
Well, I had 3. And she goes, what do you do? She goes, no. And then she ate it. And look, it's probably the right move. I didn't care for it at the moment, to be honest. But so it's like stuff like that,
Right. The shame that you feel once you become aware of how bad you're eating does burn calories. So that is an answer.
Shame does generate heat. Not many people know that, but it generates
that's how you get a little, just get your heart rate up a little bit. Just go walk in front of a school bus wearing a tight shirt and have children point and yell at you.
Yeah, they'll take care of it.
I feel terrific.
For me, that's just a family reunion. So one of the things that as we said, John and I are both musicians. One thing that has always been so fascinating to me about comedy and stand-up comedy is, and I don't know how you guys do this, and so I'm dying to hear you sort of help us understand this. Music is so different from comedy, right? This is what fascinates me because we both get up, we both perform, you have a crowd, you're feeling the crowd, you're playing your songs, whatever. But for what sucks for you guys is there's no greatest hits. Like the thing it's like the greatest cheat code of music is if you can get 10 to 15 songs, you can play for the rest of your life those songs. Now sometimes that's like annoying because you want to do the new stuff, right? But I remember realizing this a few years ago, and I was like, comedy, you can't do that. You can't just like, if because you've got probably your 10, 15 bits that always kill. That's what the crowd wants to hear. But it's such a weird thing because the minute you get up and do that, I feel like you kind of have 2 responses. People are like, yeah, and also kind of like, oh, we sort of know this bit. So like, how do you do that? Like, how do you still do old bits? Is it kind of like, what's sort of the way you have to navigate that?
It's it's funny is musicians made me furious just because they gotta play those songs and you're just like, God, dude, if I could just all comics think about it is like if I could just do this and be done with it. But it's tough. I'll do old stuff like corporate shows, like a private show, what I mean, where you like some of these people might know me. Probably a lot don't, and you need to be like, I need to play it as safe as possible. I don't need to try anything new. Like,
right.
So I still do old stuff. I'm never not too far from doing old stuff, but you do have to write new stuff. So once your special comes out, everybody's seen it and they watch it, and I tend to I'm very lucky, but a lot of people watch my special over and over again. They know everything. I remember I have a joke about a dead horse, and someone yelled it out. at a show, they're like, do the dead horse. And I would explain to them how, like, I couldn't even remember it when I tried it. Like, I've kind of got out of telling it. And the other one is Olivia. The Olivia, someone will yell out Olivia. And then I remember telling Oz, I go, look, I know in theory you want me to tell this joke, but you are yelling the main funniest part of the joke is the word Olivia. That's the joke. That's the peak of the joke. And you're yelling it, and that's how you're telling me to tell which joke. So it's like, because I've done it, and I know, and I'm like, look, I've done this. It just doesn't go as good as you want it to go. Some joke, the dead horse joke, if I can remember it, that one's not terrible because it's a long story.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's parts that like you would not know, and it's it can almost be like a song kind of thing.
Right.
So if something's kind of long, if it's quick, it's kind of you don't want to hear it again. If it's a long story, sometimes they can hear it again. But you got to write new stuff, or people won't come. I mean, they will. Like I've started trying to come up with new stuff now. And I have probably 20 to 30 minutes, depending on, sometimes it feels. And then, so by the time the special comes out, when I get out on the road, you'll just have like, hopefully you have 40 minutes. And then I have to do 20 old because I don't have, so you do like an encore of like, all right, I'll do greatest hits.
Okay.
But I'll do greatest hits from like Yelled At by a Clown, like my Comedy Central special.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people don't know those.
Yeah.
And so then you're able to do some old stuff without, or I'll do iced coffee with cream. Like, it's like you just do that. Like that, and the people like hearing that. So
the thing, like I remember thinking that I watched the Seinfeld, comedian movie, which is such an amazing sort of like glimpse into that world. But I realized something. I was like, isn't it fascinating that Sting could get up, not the wrestler, that'd be a whole different kind of performance, but Sting, the musician, could get up at, let's say here in Nashville, somebody plays the Bluebird, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get done with the round. Somebody goes, "Hey, Sting is here and he wants to play a couple songs," right? You'd be like, "Holy cow, he wants to play new songs." Well, everybody stays. He does the songs, even if the songs are terrible. Like everybody in the crowd's like, "Yeah, this is not a good song." It's still Sting's voice. It's his guitar playing. It's like it's his vibe. So even if the songs aren't, like blowing your mind, it's still Sting. There's a redemptive part of it. I realized with Seinfeld, when you watch him sort of bomb as he's putting that set together, it doesn't matter who you are in comedy. You can get up and it's Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, and if he bombs, it just bombs. There's kind of nothing. Yeah, people saw him and they can tell their friends, like I said, but what they're going to say is like, it wasn't very funny. They're not going to say like, I saw Sting and the songs were great. They're going to be like, I saw Sting and he sang and it sounded amazing. And I've always thought that is the thing that is so fascinating to me about what you guys do is you're always having to stay new, so that you can have a little bit, like you said, of where if you need to dip into something and, okay, I'll tell this bit. But even to your point, you may not have them in the brain. Like you could be like, oh, it would kill right now, but I can't remember how it goes.
Well, a lot of comics I do crowd work where they talk to the crowd and try to make fun of the crowd, that kind of stuff. And then comedians, a big reason is why I was in Chicago. I moved to New York because of comedian. I saw that in a movie theater. Like it was like Seinfeld's like my guy. I've never met him, but that's like, I love that dude. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it's tough. I mean, you're coming up with new stuff you do, but I'm in that comedian. I think Colin Quinn tells him, he's like, even Jack Nicholson could get on stage and they'd give him 5 minutes of grace, and then the audience would be like, all right, Jack, tell a joke or get off stage. Like it's like that's the vibe of like comedy. Like you have to realize, like sometimes now I can tell it's kind of, because it's newer now. People are coming to shows and they know who I am, they know my act. And you have to, when you do new jokes, you have to pay attention that you're like, because the beginning of my set, people are usually very excited and they're going to laugh at almost anything I say.
Because they're think about that? Is that where you put the joke where you're like, okay, this is the trial 2 minutes or 3 minutes?
You can get away with a lot up top, but you have to be aware of it because you don't want to end up, you can end up writing jokes. I think comedians can sometimes get too specific for their audience. It's like it goes away. Like you still need to be almost performing as if you're always trying to get a new audience. You never need to be like, I got my audience, I'm done. Let's do it. It's like I'm trying to always get more people. Yeah. And so you got to kind of write like that. So you got to sometimes be aware, like, all right, they're just excited. It's a fun night out. We're in a theater. It's a thing. So you're going to get some love up top, but then you do got to bring it. And, they're not going to boo you, but you can tell if a joke doesn't work. It's like it doesn't get as big of a laugh, and you
Yeah.
know, like, all right, that needs
Yeah.
to get better.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny. You know, you say that all the comedians or musicians drive you crazy because you guys are always like, if we could just get on and the stage and just go into cruise mode. But when I get on stage for a concert, I am never worried about the music ever. Like maybe a month or 2 months before the tour, when we're putting stuff together and rehearsing with a band, that's when I'm not worried about the music, but that's when I'm putting the creative touches on transitions, all that kind of stuff. But my number one concern when I get on stage is making the audience laugh. Like I'm only thinking about mid-song banter. And I feel like it's the same. You have those artists who are like, you just know they don't say a word in between songs. I mean, Dave and I both did a tour with Johnny Lang back in the day. The dude is incredible, but he talking to the crowd that's not on his radar. He's not worried about that. And I look at him the same way that you just described comedians looking at musicians. I'm like, man, if I could just get on stage and just play my songs, that'd be great. But I have to connect. Like the first time I made a crowd laugh while I was on stage standing at a microphone, it's like poison. Like you got to have it back. It's my number one concern, Yeah,
it's the best. I mean, I think about that a lot. For like hearing, like I can get a joke. I mean, I can tell. I know the second you're going to laugh, like, which is kind of crazy. Like, it's because laughing is not a, it's not like the crowd's going to go crazy here, or it's hard to make someone laugh. And you can tell a joke and you go, I know you are going to laugh here. And sometimes, which has always been kind of fun, it's like Seinfeld would always say, he's like, he misses the days where no one knew him, where you get to go up and prove yourself to people.
Yeah.
And I still have that now. If I go do a corporate show or something, and these people don't know who I am. But like when you get to go and then you start off and you start just murdering, like you're destroying, and then you're like, in your head, you're like, dude, I'm not even to the good stuff. Like this is, and you can tell where it's the most exciting feeling to go, y'all are losing it here, dude. Like, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do those jokes. I don't think y'all can handle it. Like you're just thinking all this in your head. And those are the funnest moments ever. Like that's, and you're like, I love this crowd. I love everything about this night. Like, it's just such a good, a good feeling. But I could see being like, it is funny to get laugh. It's addicting. I like hearing the audience quiet too.
Yeah.
Like when you got 2,000 people and you could hear someone snap their fingers.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty interesting. To be like, man.
Well, and that's such a part of your humor. Like you need the space. Like the space is as much a part of the joke as the joke, with your humor. Do you find when you have those nights when you are just killing, I find that the toughest show is the next show after that. After you have you just played Chicago and it's great, and then you're playing Springfield the next night. And now at this point, nothing against Springfield. Could be, let's just say the mountaintop was Springfield, just to be Democrat.
And now you're
and then you go to Chicago and you're like, now I've been doing it long enough that I know to expect this, but I'm like, those have been some of the hardest shows, the show after the great show, because they're not going to react in that spot that you knew they reacted 24 hours ago. And then you start second guessing yourself, all that kind of stuff. Do you find that?
Yeah. The different kind of vibe of the crowd, the different energy of the crowd. I can tell it sometimes with, it's like sometimes they don't get some crowds are getting every joke.
Yeah.
And then some are not. Like some are getting every little thing.
Right.
And then some are only getting the end. Like they laugh, but they laugh at the very end, and it's only that part. So I don't get any of the little pops like leading up to that part. And so then you're like, all right, well, this one's going to be a little more tiring or a little more, pulling, But it is tough. I mean, you look at, like, if you go to Chicago, like, I mean, there's awesome theaters everywhere, But it is true. I mean, you go to Chicago. If I was planning on trying to go to the Chicago theater, you're like, I've seen that. I lived in Chicago when I first started, so you're like, I've seen that theater. Or if you go to New York and you're like, yeah, it is tough. Like, you're these gigantic things, and then you gotta. I remember Sebastian Maniscalco. I think he did 4 Madison Square Gardens, and then came to Tennessee and did T-Pack. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so
Jeez.
like that. That is like, not that he doesn't love Nashville, like, but that's a big, like, 4 Madison Square Gardens, and
Right.
then you go do T-Pack in Nashville, and you're like, this is like the worst show. Like, you would just be like, and T-Pack's wonderful, but
Right.
when coming off
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
very tough.
So this is bear with me because this might be bizarre to hear, but so my whole career I've done music. Probably 10 years ago, because my shows are a lot of me talking, my manager was like, you got to try to do some stand up. So I was like, all right, because I think this would make sense to you if you've seen anybody play, because John is this way too. Like, as a musician, you sort of build up this banter before you know it, and you have like an hour worth of banter. Like
Mhm.
granted, a lot of them lean on the songs, but you sort of realize like I've got some stories that kind of hold up just on their own. So my manager was like, let's just try to book some stand up shows. And I was like, great. And I've done all these weird videos throughout my whole career too. So I kind of was, and I'd done improv and stuff. So I was like, let's try it. One of the most fascinating things that I learned. So I did that for a minute, did like probably 4 or 5 shows. It was just stand up. What was funny is they were all like an hour 15. And my wife came to one of the shows and she was like, hey, it was funny. It was great. You got to cut like 30 minutes out. I was like, well,
Mhm.
because I was thinking music. I was like, people,
Yeah.
people come to music, so they need an hour and a half. So one of the first things I learned was like that people get tired. They like
Yeah.
people, and I didn't realize that. And so fast forward to, I don't know when this was, 3 years ago, my manager says, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a stand up and music show. So I came out, I did 45 minutes of music, 15 minutes, and then I did 45 minutes of stand up. So we did all these rooms. It was really fun, but most of them were, 500 people or so.
Mhm.
The energy and the immediacy of those rooms, I sort of got used to. I was like, the bits flow this quickly. They go, we did the Ryman. That was, you talk about trial by fire. So I did the 45 minutes of my music. We do the break. I did my stand up. It was so crazy how much real time I was learning how laughter in a room like that, like it lasts longer. And so I'd have to wait and wait. And then I'm like, what do I look like right now? Because like if I'm sort of staring at the crowd, like,
Mhm.
okay, they're done. So this is my wife, right? But so I'm like, okay, well, walk. Don't just stand. And it was crazy to learn, to your point, how you scale rooms differently with
Yeah.
comedy, because you would hear the laughter, 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 and you're like, dang, this is lasting 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Where in a room that, like, I played in Portland, this place was like 300 people. It's like, and it's gone, and you're like, oh god, jump! You're moving the bits quicker because things have to flow quicker. It was
Yeah.
crazy. Like I'd never. That would be something, to your point about moving. That would be. I mean, do you find yourself like, okay, this is tonight we're at a 45 mile per hour. Tonight we're at 90. Tonight's 15 miles per hour at this room. Is that something you find fluctuates?
Yeah, absolutely. Like comedy clubs, you're very on top of them. So it's very,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
I came from New York, and New York was very quick. You do shows in New York, you're in front of people that don't necessarily even want to be there. They don't know who you are, uh, so you have to come out and like prove yourself every time, and you got to come out and just be like, blah, 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 blah. And
it's
so when
so
I even
funny.
go back to New York, sometimes it'll take me like a couple shows. Even I'm just doing like comedy clubs, not doing a
Yeah,
full
yeah,
hour,
yeah,
but
yeah,
like going and doing like 15 minutes. It'll take you a couple shows to be like, all right, let me get this New York rhythm back, where
yeah,
it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
like quicker, and like you can't just drag it out. But you do also have to teach yourself to be comfortable in that silence. You've got to be, because you got to look at, it's got to
Yes,
be confidence, without being like confident that like the people can sit there and relax, knowing that this guy knows what he's doing. He's in control. Like, I'm not
right,
worried
right,
about
right, right,
where this is going to
right,
go.
right,
Yeah.
And
right.
the Ryman is, I mean, the laugh from there, it's nuts. It's crazy. I mean, it's just, it hits you, it goes back, it's everywhere.
Yeah,
That's, yeah, way more, where if you go too quick, they're not going to hear stuff.
exactly.
They're going to
Yep,
miss it, because
yep.
it's just, it's just different, and so you got to like you got to be a little bit more like calmer, and I'm trying to work on that pacing, like when they get back into theaters, to like the drive-in shows kind of helped with that, because it was
Yeah.
like I couldn't hear them, and so I have to pace myself
God.
off just knowing that, just like being like, I hope these jokes, I think they're doing
That's got to
good,
be so bizarre.
Oh,
No
it's great.
idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Like,
people when you saw
are they honking when they're laughing?
Chicago did. Chicago was
No.
the cool. So, but it was great. Chicago was one of the best shows I always remember, probably for my whole career.
Really?
Wow.
It's 500 cars. It was
Jeez.
raining. It was 40 degrees out. Some people are people are sitting out of the cars out front. And then when I walked on stage, you see all these flashing the lights and honking the horn. And when I would tell a joke, since they all got to have their windows up, I mean, I can't hear anything. They would honk, kind of just bop 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 beep beep, for like when they liked a joke. They didn't do it crazy. It wasn't going bing, It was just kind of like, and you learn that you're like, I really just need a reaction.
Yeah.
It's like
100%.
It's not like it has to be laugh. It just I need some dude. That's it's so good. Yeah, I love that joke. And then you go, and to see that the whole show was
It
something
feels
pretty
like
special.
it feels like an experiment. It feels like that is literally
Yeah.
like what Vanderbilt will be like. Oh, we have this sociological test we're going to do, and let's see if it needs to be laughter. But that's exactly you're
Well,
right. There
during
is-
COVID, doing all these virtual shows where you're just just an idiot in a room with a piano, looking at a computer, and you finish, and there's just nothing.
Yeah.
I tried like
brutal.
I mean I know you
Brutal.
mentioned this I think in the last in your how you did a Zoom when Nate, but like I had a couple, like I got super motivated at the beginning of quarantine, and I was like, I'm gonna do an Instagram live every day. Like I think everybody did this.
Yeah.
And I would come on and I had like little funny bits. I had like a little piece of paper, and I don't want to see them again because I think I'll lose years of my life, because it was like, I'd see the numbers and be like, all right. And I'd be like, so I was running yesterday and I'm watching the number, and this, it was a boy. No, it was a dog. And I'm just watching the numbers, and there's just no response. Like nobody's saying anything on the feed. And I was just like, I did it like two days, and I was like, we're just gonna play songs. This is a nightmare. Because I just was like, I couldn't finish a thought. I was like, no clue if it was even mildly funny. People be like, ha 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 ha, and then little hearts, and I was like, God, this is torture.
Yeah.
Like,
It's brutal. It's brutal. Yeah, it's like it's tough to like. That's where like new jokes is like.
Ugh.
You can't. You got to do that kind of Zoom stuff. You got to do tried and true. Where you're like, look, I know this works. Like, but I mean,
when
you're like,
you
I
said
know
you
this is
logged
funny.
on and it's just your face, and then you heard somebody say what they say, what the comments is.
They said, they go, oh, I don't know. They go, I don't know. It's some stupid comedian, and then it was just my stupid face on the Zoom, and that's all I heard. And I'm like,
That is
what's
so
that?
brutal.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, it was
it's so
tough.
The other thing that killed me, I just have to say this quickly. I wrote it down because I thought it was like almost profound what you said, where you did the bit and you pop out. I mean, I'm doing the Chris Farley thing. I'm like, you remember when you? So forgive me for doing this. Your dad.
I don't mind hearing it, because it's not, like I know not a lot of people have seen it yet. Like they've seen it to you, and like you saw it.
Okay.
Like, so I did. Feedback's not terrible right now.
Well, I think this is actually the Tennessee Kid, but you pop out. Say it without laughing. You pop out and surprise your dad, and he's looking at you like, what? And you're like, and you realize the crowd doesn't know who you are. And then you said something that I think is one of the most profound, hysterical things I've ever heard. That comedy, for people who don't know it's comedy, is just mean speech.
Yeah.
I mean, that feeling of people just kind of looking at you like, you're like, no, this is supposed to be funny. They're like, well, it just sounds like you're mad. You're just being mean.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If no one sets something up, comedy. Because I've had sometimes people they'll be like, "Why is he being mean?" You're like, well, "Comedy's mean." It's the whole every joke on earth there's like annoyance is
Yes.
like
Right.
that's how you make funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like if they have no concept of it, I mean,
Like,
they're
what's
like,
wrong,
oh
man?
god,
It's like,
this
chill
guy.
out.
It's
Yeah.
good to know that you don't mind hearing that kind of stuff, because Dave and I actually like woke up early this morning
Oh,
to
my
get
gosh.
together, and we're like, we need a good 4.5 hours to just
We
get
like we
your
made each
bits
other
out of our system.
We
Like,
made each other. John lives right across the street, and he came over, and we were brainstorming for this, which I'm sure you can tell just by how clean and
all
really
the
tight the
research
whole
we've
thing
done.
is.
Yeah.
But literally, we said we have to say this stuff to each other, so we won't say it to Nate. And he's like, "Oh God!" it's one of
Otherwise, the
these
whole hour
interviews.
is just going to be.
It's just going to be.
Oh, and then there was
ruined.
the other thing that you said.
He's oh yeah, and like no, that's it. I think he started giving me jokes. The best is people come to do that to me, and it's not my joke. You get that a lot. They're like, "You did that right." I'm like, "I don't." You're like, "You never did anything about an astronaut?" I'm like, "Nah, I don't." Kind of thing. They go, "I think
sure?
you did." You're like, "It's." I mean, it's pretty specific. I mean, like, it's not like a wife thing. It's like it would always be like, you ever do like you did a joke about a camel, astronaut camel eating a banana or something? And I'm like, I don't. I'm trying to think.
Did I riff one night?
Yeah,
Maybe I did.
maybe off the dome I did something like that. You just
Whenever
don't
I'm
make-
riffing off the cuff, I go with astronaut camel. That's sort of like.
Yes.
Dave, thank goodness we're finally out of the woods with winter. It's going to be over before we know it.
Amen, amen. Have you gotten a chance to try those Sunday lawn care products? I just ordered mine last week.
I'm so glad you asked, Dave, because I have.
Oh, no way.
And Sunday has exceeded my expectations. You can really tell the difference in personalized lawn care analysis and formulas and eco-friendliness. What do you think so far?
Of your lawn, it's basically Jumanji over there. I'm super jealous. The good thing was it was really as easy as visiting getsunday.com and entering my home address. My personalized free lawn analysis came back in a matter of seconds. I've already learned so much about my lawn.
Isn't it fascinating?
It is.
I mean, it makes getting serious about your grass fun.
And you know, John, I've been serious about your grass for years. And in the past, I've spent hours, no, days working away, wasting precious time with my kids only to yield little results. Mainly weeds and brown grass. And the chemicals and other products, yuck.
I agree. I'm so happy I can actually pronounce the ingredients Sunday uses. Like seaweed, iron, molasses. I can grow better grass and feel better about it.
You know, Sunday really isn't just a lawn care product.
No way.
It's a customized lawn plan that works with nature, which is really a no-brainer. And we both know that I don't have much of one to start with.
Right.
I can't believe I hadn't tried their products sooner.
I can't recommend their research-based and easy-to-use method enough, Dave. Let Sunday take the guesswork out of growing a greener, more beautiful lawn this spring.
Let it take the guesswork out of the grass work and visit getsunday.com/Dadville to get $20 off your custom lawn plan at checkout.
That's $20 off your custom plan at getsunday.com/Dadville.
Take the guesswork
out of grass work.
Yeah.
Lane.
That's.
So I want to take us back to like childhood and all that stuff. But before we do, I just have one last question about sort of the overlap with musicians and comics. I know that I have, like, through all the songs that, you know, I've written over the years, you know, you try them out a little bit, you write a new song, and I have a couple songs that have never made a record. And I wrote them like 9 years ago. And I wanted it to go on the 2013 record. And I just didn't quite, you know, I played it at a writer's round, didn't get the reaction. Then 2015, same thing. It just never made the record. But inside, I'm like, I know this is a good song. I tweak it a little bit every now and then. But every time I play it, or when I play it for my producer or whatever, it just never gets picked. It's like the me on the kickball team. Do you have bits like that? Do you have bits where you're like, this bombs every time, but I swear this is funny. I need to find that one word tweak and then people are going to see how hilarious this is. Or do you just scrap it?
Yeah. No. There's times I've write stuff that I think it's a great idea, and I think I'm not a good enough comic to do it yet, and so I won't do it. Like, but I'll know that I'll have the idea, and maybe I'll write the idea down, and I just know, like, I know this is great. I'm not good enough to figure out how to make this work yet.
Well, or it just might be hilarious, but you're like, I can't be the one to make this joke. This has got to be this other guy.
I mean, you have a lot of stuff that you try to that doesn't work, and that's work. But that's what you got to do is you just hang on to it, and sometimes what I'll do is if I have a joke that maybe can't work on its own, it's almost like go mine it for parts, and where I go like, well, I'll at least take my iced coffee with milk joke about buying, and then so when I say I never bought milk publicly in the history of my life. So when I said that, that's off an idea of a joke I had where I thought like milk is never like in a man's life unless like he's with a woman. So like I have milk with my mom. You always have milk. You got to have milk.
Yeah.
And then I'm not single. I don't think I ever bought milk once. And then I get married, and now, well, we got to go get milk. Milk is like something that only moms remember to buy. Like just dads are just like, I forgot about milk. And so that was the idea of that I could never make it stand on its own.
Yeah.
So then in that iced coffee with milk joke, I found a place for it to say, I've never bought milk publicly in my life. Like it stinks sometimes to get narrowed down to just this one little sentence when I wanted it to be this bigger thing.
Totally.
But sometimes you just got to just hang on to it. Either hang on to it and go like, one day this will click for me.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to find the place for it to go.
For it to live.
That's so fascinating. I mean, that's
it
the equivalent
so
of like the chorus line that you're like, this is not only the chorus, this is the name of the album now, and this is the name of the documentary.
Yeah.
And then it maybe eventually becomes like the third line of a bridge of a,
It just
iTunes special song. I don't even know if they do those anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other thing that I want to ask you really quickly, much like what John was just sort of referring to, we play songs for our wives, like I only have one wife. I'm talking about John and I both, but you come in, you're like, hey, what do you think? And they go, hey, I like this. How do you do that with your wife? I mean, what does that look like? Because obviously that's the other thing, again, that I learned so much in the times that I've done it is you're in a mode. Songwriting is so different because you can sit and play it and you don't have to be performing. You can, they can, but when somebody's like, hey, do the bit, which is a nightmare for comics. I have to imagine where you're on a radio show and like, do the Olivia bit. And you're like, oh, okay, well now I got to like, okay, I got to like puff, I got to sort of, but like, do you go in and go like, all right, babe, like, okay, tell me if this is funny, or how does that work?
With jokes about her, right?
Well, no, just anything. Like if you have something you're excited, is she someone you sort of run it by her?
Yeah, dude, she's actually a pretty good laugher, and
quote,
that's what you need is like someone that's a good laugher. And, so and I got friends I can call that. I got one buddy, buddy Jeremy. He'll laugh at anything. So if I need something. If I need I just want no one's gonna like this joke, but I want something then I can tell him and I can be like, hey, that's good, right? Because he's gonna laugh no matter what.
Just as a side note, you reach out to us anytime.
Yeah, I mean,
you're like, I don't need to know if this is good or bad. I just need to know that it's good. We will laugh.
Yeah, you're like, what's up with this, guys? And you're like, and then if you don't, I will know for sure. And I'm like, man, that must have been real bad. So yeah, she does. I try. I'll tell her stuff. I just kind of tell her like roughly the idea. And if I get her laughing, then that makes you kind of put on a show a little bit and you kind of do the whole joke. So it's like you would do. I do stuff like that. Like I'll ask her like that stuff on the radio when you got to do it. That is the worst, which luckily you still have to do it. There's a couple old radio shows that you can still do that where they want you just to do your act. That's kind of going away. It was around when I first was going out. And you'd have to straight up do your act. But it does help you learn to be conversational because then you got to tell that joke in a way that's not like me telling a joke. So I'm trying to make it sound more like a story, or, you speed it up. Maybe you cut some parts out, you do some stuff, but it is the absolute worst to do your act on the radio.
Totally.
Yeah.
So rewind. How your dad is a magician, so I'm thinking that's got to be a little bit of the get in. You've got some pedigree for it in your life, but what makes you want to be a stand up comic? Like what is the moment? What's the sort of setup? Is there something that you said you saw a comedian, which had something to do with you moving to New York, but what got you into it? What was the thing?
It was, I think my dad doing that played more into it than I realized. I was just around it. I never really thought about it then. And then I remember, just being funny in high school and like people making jokes and making people laugh, and they would be like, and I was never like a class clown, but it was making people laugh, like, with just either ripping on people, making jokes, whatever. I remember doing one time talking at a party and telling us this long story, and I remember I was in front of my friends at in my high school, and it's like it's doing great, like everybody's laughing, everybody's losing it, and then we go to a party at a different high school. And my buddy, it's all different kids. And my buddy goes, tell him that story. And I start telling it, and it bombs. And it was almost weirdly, when I think back on it, it was the first time that to tell something that I was like, oh, these people don't know who I am. Those people do. So they think I'm funny because they know who I am. And then I go somewhere else. And you're like, I was in like their mom's kitchen, like, just like, yeah, we did and everybody's like, like, I don't even know. And you're like, oh God, you're like, all right, I'm gonna get out of here. I gotta get, like, you just want to. And so it's almost like the first time bombing.
Yeah.
So but I do, I remember wanting to think I want to do stand up, and then I had a friend that wanted to go to Chicago, and he wanted to go to Second City.
Oh wow.
And so I was like, it kind of worked out that I was like, all right, I was like, I'll go. Like, I was 23, I didn't go to college, so I was having like a regular job. I was like, I can come back and do this job whenever. And then I moved and I started, and it kind of just kept going from there.
Was there any in that time between, whatever that would have been 18 and 23, were there things in you that were like, God, I want to try this. I got to just figure out how to do it. Or were you kind of like, if your friend had moved, do you think you'd still be doing that job now?
I think about that. There's part of me that's like, I'm doing it so much now that you're like, I would have to hope that I would be led to do it no matter what, but I don't know. And, I wasn't, I didn't know what to do. It wasn't, like, it was like, you don't have, at this point, there's no internet, I mean, there's internet, but you're not on it like we are now. You're not watching videos of other comedians. I would hear them on Bob and Tom, this radio show.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
And so I could hear them there, and then I would be like, I think I want to do that. Like, I think, I like that. And I didn't really know what to do here. I never actually did it in Nashville first. I moved to Chicago and did it there first. And I took a comedy class, because I didn't know what to do.
Wow.
And
through
which
Second City?
No, I did like a little bit of Second City, like 8 weeks. I didn't like improv.
Okay.
And then that's another reason I could tell I liked stand up, because I didn't want to be I wanted to be control of what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And then so I took an actual stand up class, which, I don't think you need stand up classes at all. But when you're starting and you don't know what to do, and you're so nervous and you're scared, and you're not going to hold yourself accountable. If you're I'm that kind of person that wouldn't hold myself accountable, and I would just be like, well, I'm not going to go tonight. And so when I had this class and these people could call me and say, where were you? You're like, well, I got to go. And then so you would go and just be around other comedians, like other people trying to start like you, that are nervous as you are.
Yeah.
And then you get to also all be nervous together. And you're not in an open mic where you're kind of intimidated by the guy that's been doing it 2 years. Yeah. And then he's, and you feel like, like you're the worst and all this. Yeah. So it's like you needed that kind of stuff. But yeah, I did write in high school, my 10 years, where I'll be in 10 years. I said I'd be at Zanies.
No way.
I really? Perform at Zanies. Yeah. So, but I don't like, it's like when I write that, I always think back, like, I don't know if I'm not, like, it's a joke when I'm writing it, but there's no way it was a joke. It had to be, I had to have wanted to do that.
Right.
To write that. But I don't, there was never, I probably I don't know. You always hear sometimes people go, I knew when I was 5 years old, I wanted this.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think I thought that, but everything kind of led to this.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, because I watched some video of your dad, and he's hilarious. I mean, he is a stand-up comedian who does magic in his show. So what was the relationship like as you're growing up, and you're like, would you go to his shows? Did you think he was funny?
Yeah. I mean, I would do, I've done a bunch of his shows. I'd be like I'd help him. We did stuff at our church. He would do shows at church, and I would always do something, kind of funny with him. So I was doing some kind of shows. I'd ruined some of his shows. I mean, he went to Tribeca, and so he came to my kindergarten, and he was a clown at the very beginning. So my dad started, he was a clown, and then he just started doing magic. But he's always done comedy in all of this stuff. And so he's doing his magic show, and one of the tricks was, and this is an old trick I'm not giving away, but there's like, it's a piece of board that has two doors that open, and then there's a dog, and the dog slides across, and you can see that you close the door, when the dog goes across, you can see that it crosses to the other door, and then you open that door, and the dog is like not there, and you're doing it it's a kid's trick that you have 5-year-olds be like, "Where's the dog?" And wherever they say, the dog's always in the other thing. So it's like, it was just for doing kids parties. And so I was going to help my dad, but I was 5, and then I got nervous. And so then my dad just sets me on stage behind him. Well, I'm behind the trick now. So I see that there's 2 dogs. That's how that trick's done. And so I just, my dad's doing it. And then I just go, "Dad." And he's like, "Yeah." And I go, "There's 2 dogs." Like, I just give his whole trick away. And then, I mean, everybody's like,
You're like, "What else have you been lying about, Dad?"
Yeah. What else?
Is there 2 moms, Dad? Is there 2 moms?
Yeah. What are you not telling me about? So it's like I gave his whole trick away. So we would do, they always say too that I was like, I like joke books. I remember, I would always tell them. My dad always says some stuff. I forget the joke, but I told a joke from a joke book, and I explained why it was funny. He remembers me doing that when I was a kid. So maybe I did want to do it more. Maybe I've never thought about it, Maybe I should go talk to a therapist to get into it. That's what you guys are here for. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm going to start crying. And at the end of this, I'm crying. I'm like, what happened, dude? Like,
around that 45-minute mark, that's when everybody starts crying.
That's when everybody starts crying.
That's exactly right.
But it's just so interesting that you weren't like in high school thinking like, well, that's kind of the family business, and I'm, falling in line necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I thought of it. We would make a lot of jokes about going to Zanies. I wrote that. I would, but it was, it was almost like saying like, yeah, I want to go do it. But then it's like, you just don't know what to do. I didn't know, my dad was doing magic, even though it's similar things. He was a teacher, as his day job. And so I just don't know. Like, he was like, yeah, I just wasn't, I don't think I was really knew what to, I didn't know the road to take.
Right.
Like if you grew up here in Nashville and you want to be a musician, it's like, well, you would know what to do.
Yeah.
And then, so I needed someone that was like, oh, I'll do it too. Like, I did. I was scared to go on my own. And so when I got that buddy that said, I'll go do it, I was like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a job that would be more terrifying to do, like other than 100%. Like maybe a stunt double or something. But I mean, like, I just because there's no, even with us, I'm behind a guitar. John's behind a piano, and so many things can go right and wrong. You're not just either funny or not, or not.
Well, you can always bail out of the bit.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. But like with you, it's
you give
like,
yourself outs. I'll give myself outs in a long story. I'll have like little ways to be like, I could be done with this now. So I'm not stuck in something.
Would you please name your next special? I could be done with this now.
Yeah, it's almost. I'm gonna name it. It's almost over, and then
just call it.
Yeah.
So tell us about your daughter. Does she where is she? I love how she intros the specials, which is so cute. Where is she with you and your humor? Like, is that, and I would imagine now it's got to get tricky because, you're kind of getting into that, a little bit of the ubiquitous thing where it's like you're on Netflix. Everybody, hey, that's my friend's dad up there. And, and then you come pick her up and people are like, So like, how does she feel about that? Like, where is she with all that?
She, I would ask her when the Tennessee Kid came out, I was like, did anybody come up and say anything to you? And she's like, no. She always just goes quickly, no, not at all. Like, no one cares. But she was 6 or 7. So like kids don't like talk, which is, I always try to do, which I might do as a joke one day. So y'all can maybe hear one new idea. But the idea, like, kids they don't like greet each other. They just kind of, or say goodbye. it's
Yep.
very kind of like like sociopaths, like just kind of like they just walk and they play.
Yeah.
And then when they leave, the parent always has to go, all right, hey, don't be a psycho. Why don't you say goodbye? Thanks for letting me come out. I mean, they just bail out the door, and you're like, all right.
I'm just sorry. One of the things that I've been trying to work on this bit too, and it's this idea that if you actually watch grown men into conversation, I literally will get in my car and start laughing by myself because I will be in a conversation with a friend of mine who's like, "Man, I'll be praying for your daughter. Is she gonna be?" And he's like, "Yeah, man." It's like, "What are y'all doing this weekend?" And I'll be in my car in seconds. I'm like, "How did we end that?"
Yeah.
He was just telling me about his mom died 2 weeks ago, and it's just everything is cold. It's just with dudes, it's like
cold.
bam.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's a hangover from kids. Like we just never knew.
Yeah, it could be. You're just like, all right, I'll see you,
I mean,
man.
this happened yesterday. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's like, "Yeah, man, just if you don't mind thinking about that." I was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, all right. And we're done. I was like, we went from like, he couldn't be more vulnerable to end of conversation. And both of us mutually agreed, this is the end of I'm going to see that. Like,
Maybe two dudes want to just be like, all right, they want to get it off their chest, but then you're like, let's be done. I did it. I needed to get it out, but don't be like, yeah, we're not going to sit and let,
just stare at each other, like feeling these emotions.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So is she somebody where she thinks you're funny? Like, is she watching the specials and laughing? Or does she like, "Daddy, tell me you got any new jokes" kind of vibe?
She likes the Olivia joke. She always says that. She likes the Olivia joke, and she likes an old joke I had about my buddy Lewis eating a McDonald's burger and playing a prank on him is her favorite joke. And then, we just did some promo stuff with Netflix where I watched the jokes about her with her.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that's cool.
And so she sees all these jokes. I would never do a joke that she doesn't know.
Right.
And I always tell her, I always say, like, I would never, if you don't want me to do a joke, or I would never do it. I don't ever want to cross the line of being a dad. It's like I'm her dad. She wants to tell me something that she doesn't want to tell anybody else. I'm not going to lose that.
Right.
That'd break my heart. I'd quit comedy before I'd lose the trust of that.
Right.
And now, if it's really funny, though, it's
I was
pretty
gonna
tough.
say.
So, like, I mean, I'm gonna work on it.
All of a sudden, that's your friend's daughter.
Yeah.
Oh,
there
you go.
Yeah. She had one joke in this special that she didn't like. It was about them playing on iPads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they and she didn't like that one. But that one I had to tell her, I was like, look, it's not about you. That's every kid does this.
Yeah.
Oh my
I go, it's these YouTube videos and I mean, billions of kids are watching it. So like I'm just kind of explaining comedy, but like I'm not making fun of you. It's the idea of it is it's all children are doing this.
Right.
And it's relatable for parents to under.
I mean,
it's not
everything you said in that thing about how your daughter makes these videos on your phone, like, hey guys, subscribe, and today we're gonna do I have 3 videos from 2 days ago that my daughter's put together. I mean, you are doing the bit about my kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I would tell her, to be like, I talk about it as it's or me or you or us going through this, but it's like, let's go find phones and I'll show you. There's hours of just everybody's on iCloud. Everybody's got 100 videos and they're hours long, and it's y'all just making these. I was like, that's what it is. And so I'll explain that stuff to her. She has had some people, she said there's been people more at her school that come up and be like, say like they like me or something. Mm-hmm. So like it's definitely people are getting it used. She's getting used to that more. But it's like normal to her. It's like your kids, y'all are musicians. My dad was a magician. Like in a weird way, you don't think someone has to tell you that it's not normal.
Yeah.
Like
that's well said.
When you grow up with it, they have to go, yeah, when you're like, my dad's a magician, I blow over it. And they're like, yeah, man, you got to talk about it. Like, that's not a regular thing. And I'm like, what? Your dad's not a magician, dude? Like, he goes,
your dad wouldn't pull car keys out of your ears?
He didn't do that? Like, yeah.
No. My, one of my friends, they have quads, which is crazy. Like they had 4 kids at once. And she was laughing at me. She said that her daughter came over to play with our daughter and they saw me around. Cause I have a studio in the backyard and I was working writing and I kind of came in and was eating lunch and I saw them at church next weekend. They were like crying, laughing. I was like, what's so funny? They said, well, our daughter came home and they went to her dad and she was like, Dad, what does Mr. Barnes do? And he was like, oh, he's a musician, he plays. And she was like, he was just like there, like all day, just like hanging out. She's like, he's like, yeah, that's what they do. And she goes, why can't you do that? He's home all the time. And then it was like turned into shame, which of course he got hot and started sweating. But I think like it made me realize like this is it's such a weird thing when you do something where you're around and your kid thinks, well, of course that's normal. And with that, I was going to ask too, what does traveling look like, and how does she do with that? Because obviously, I think that's one of the trickiest parts of what you do is that you can't do it from afar. I mean, you can with the Netflix specials, but it's an in-person thing.
Yeah, they it is funny. They do the kids do notice that where they just think they'll be like, well, all her friends are like, well, Harper's dad doesn't work, like, and they because they're, and it is tough because it's tough for us to have friends because we're, even as a grown man, I'll call my buddies and be like, what are you doing today? They're like, I don't know, working, dude. Like, what are you, an idiot? And I'm like, I thought we go see a movie the other day, dude. I thought it was a good day to go see a movie. And they're like, what are you, insane, dude? Like,
it's raining
I'm
outside.
like,
let's go see a movie.
Yeah. I wake up, I don't go to bed till 2. Like, I wake up at like 9:30, 9 a.m.'s like, I mean, I got to set alarm for 9 a.m. I'm like, what is happening? Like, they're
don't you worry? I mean, John and I laugh at this. Don't you sort of worry about her husband someday? Like, her normal is going to be so interesting that whoever she marries, she's like, why are you awake right now? And where are you going? He's like, I have a job.
Where do you go
She's
every day?
Yeah, what are you doing? Like, how do you not? I called you last night at 2 a.m. You didn't answer. I don't understand what is happening.
Who is she?
Yeah. It's what were we talking about? Traveling. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely tougher. So I'm usually comics were Thursday to Sunday, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Thursday, maybe come home Sunday, maybe even a Monday. It all obviously can change. Sometimes you got to mix it up during the week. We've been I started taking a bus this year. So comedy clubs, you would just go. I fly to Cincinnati. I stay there. I come home Sunday, and you're gone. And I'm home during the week. And so that's where your time is kind of at is during is during the week.
So let me real quick, because this is helpful. So when you go to Cincinnati, is it still where you're there for the whole weekend? You're not doing a tour like we would do.
Now I'm doing a tour.
Okay, you are now, but like traditionally,
yeah,
in the beginning especially, you're there for 3 nights.
Yeah. So comedy clubs, you stay the whole week. Okay. Which I'm actually doing comedy clubs right now because they can be half capacity, and I've got to work on new stuff. But I'm doing theaters now, so I get a bus, and you do each city. So I drive to the city. We leave, just like y'all leave it. Midnight. Wake up. So she'll come on the bus with me some, and that's the greatest. I mean, it's her favorite thing on earth is to be on that bus. She loves it.
Will your wife come too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a ton, but she's in school now, and but it's when the bus can come here, it's just easy to hop on and then we just go do stuff. So I think she'll travel with me more than she ever did because it's a lot easier than it was the other way. The hard part for the road I've learned is when I'm gone, when I'm not gone. It's like if you get home for like a month. And then they go, okay, Dad's here. And then then you're like, hey, I'm starting back up. And then that first time you kind of go out. And then those are like kind of, they got to get back used to you kind of being gone. I remember when she was 2, we were we live back in Nashville now, but I was just randomly back home. And then we were staying here for like a couple weeks. And so I was leaving in between. And so got my suitcase. I'm walking the door, and then she packs her Minnie Mouse suitcase with just toys. And she's like, "All right, I'm going with Daddy." And I mean, that was like where you're like, "I'm about to quit. I'm gonna quit comedy. Like I can't." It was. I mean, just the 2. She's 2, and she's like this. That was a tough one. And but it's like, she gets used to it, and I look at it as like, a lot of dads have to work 50 hours a week, and like they're Right. So there's goods and bad, and it is what it is.
And it's so great that you enjoy it. I mean, that sounds ridiculous to say, but it's such a different thing seeing your dad do something if he's gone, but he's really enjoying doing it. Like it gives you
Yes.
life. Yeah.
We have one kid too, and someone brought up, I'd have liked to have another kid. We kind of had a kid late, but a friend of ours said, very nice. For me, it was like, you know what? You're going to have an amazing relationship with one kid instead of trying to split time with two, especially with how much I'm gone, which I do for, like how much I'm having to travel. It really has worked out that like when I come home, it's like my time goes to, it's like it gets to be on her.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
and so it is, you do try to get that relationship, and we, I mean, and now FaceTime too. FaceTime's huge.
Yeah.
You at least see them
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
night, every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you feel about FaceTime though? Because when I became a dad, and at first I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Nashville from Indianapolis because I was like, I'm going to have to write songs for other people because now that I have kids, I can't travel anymore, which obviously that I still travel, but I'm like, oh, we got FaceTime. That'll be great. It's like we're in the same room. And I have a intense love-hate relationship with FaceTime. I love the way that you started your special FaceTiming with your family because I'm like, I mean, it really took till maybe my kids were like 6, my oldest 6, 7, before FaceTime became something that wasn't giving me motion sickness, and I had to just, eventually
This
hang up
shot.
on my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like
where they're holding the
double
phone like
chins.
this, like, Dad.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like, oh,
They're going to
God,
talk
see
on
their brains.
FaceTime. I mean, you see it, you see younger people, like when they're out, they're being like Target. They're like FaceTiming their friend. And you're like, what are you, crazy
I mean,
person?
this is a
But, like,
Viking.
that's almost like they're just used to that. My daughter can't wait to hang up on me on FaceTime. I mean, it's like I'll be FaceTime her, and it's like, all right, well, I'm about to go. Okay, all right, bye. And she's
Oh, I
just
love
gone.
that.
Like it's just a boom.
I
Like
love
they
that.
love it. Like they have
See ya.
no emotion with it. Just
Yeah.
X.
See ya.
See ya.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, sorry to bother you.
Sorry.
You know.
That's a life you're living that I'm paying for out there in
Yeah, yeah.
Nashville.
Yeah.
So before we go, we have a couple questions we ask at the end. But before we go, we have to speak to this bit that I think is my favorite. I'm gonna start giggling. I'm a giggler. I come from a long line of gigglers. When you talk, but this podcast is called Dadville.
Yeah.
As you know, I hope you know. You may not know this is a sports podcast. I don't know. I'm here. There, when you do the bit about your daughter in school and it ends,
Oh my gosh.
I'm not going to give it away because for the people that haven't seen it, it is you go from Common Core math into your daughter and being on the bus, which that bit I'm trying not to laugh right now, but that sentiment as dads is so universal. And I think what's tricky is you there's the dad shame of like, I should be involved and I should know everything about my daughter and kids. And then there's the other half, you're like, I just can't, I can't do that. Like my brain doesn't work to do that. Like that disconnect with like, I mean, I watched the special and the next morning, this morning, I am signing one of my 9-year-olds. Hey, Dad, will you sign this all the work I did? Yes, sure, sign it. And my wife walks in. She's like, hey, do you ever read those to like see if he actually did the work? I was like, She's like, well, you should do that. And I was like, well, I trust him. She's like, he's 9. What do you mean? Like, he's not. What has he done to earn your trust? And then she checks it. And of course, he's first child overachiever. So by the grace of God, he had done it. But my brain was like, okay, what else? Yeah, cool. Move on. Like, there's just no, like, what is it about? What is it about that? I think that's why that joke is so universal. Again, I'm not going to give it away. I want people to watch it. But what is it about that feeling of like, why are you calling me about why would you not call the mom? She's the one you talk to about these problems.
Yeah. It's just a common, it's like we're like, that's what the wonderful thing about stand up is like when you do these jokes and you can tell when they hit that you're like, you're like, this is something that everybody goes through.
Yes.
And this thought is, I am, you can just tell, like, you're like, I'm in their brain with this thought. Like they're like, yeah, dude. Like, and they're just so on board. And it's like, it's a pretty awesome, like, that's the stuff you're searching for is like that kind of, and sometimes it's always, you can tell when sometimes it feels too obvious. Those are the ones that sometimes you're like, well, no, that's the one you can almost talk yourself out of it and be like, I don't know if that's anybody's or you think no one's going to know what that is. And then you just like, well, let me try it.
Yeah.
And then you try it. And then when they do that at the end, you're like, yeah, it's like, all right, yeah, that was.
It's such a
people
dad.
get
It's
it.
just such a dad.
It's a
thing.
very dad thing.
We mean well. There's no ill will, but it's just we don't have the tools.
No, you just don't. Yeah, it's just not in your thought process. I mean, that's what's wonderful about it's like about a family. It's like it's like like my wife she does a lot of that kind of stuff of just their life is if my wife leaves and I have to get dinner for us, it's like I mean, we're going to McDonald's.
Yes,
we're not
right
even
now.
Sort of.
Yes, and
we're
they'll
not
know
even
my
thinking
name.
about food. Yeah.
Dave, you're back. Is Annie out? Yeah, she's out for the night.
Yeah, she's out.
John had a thing that happened that I stole for my stand-up show, but where and I just thought if this is not the temperature of where dads are, he was walking. We live right off Belmont near in 12 South, and he was just walking his two girls up the street, and a woman stopped him and said, "Good for you." And he was like,
"Yeah."
She's like, "You are such a great dad."
Yeah.
And kept walking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the what less could I be doing right now? I'm just pushing my daughters in a stroller. Like, if I were Amy,
is that
she would
where
just
we've
blow right
to?
past.
Yeah.
America.
If you're Amy, she's like, "Where's the father?" She yells at him like,
"Yeah, exactly."
You're like, she's like,
"They're not strapped in. You're not doing it right."
I had that same thing with it. I changed my tire, and it was, and my daughter was with me, and I said, I'm going to do this. Instead of calling someone, I was like, I want her to do it. I want her to see this. I want her to show her. I mean, she's 8. It's not like, and I mean, it was brutal to change his tire. And this guy drove up and he goes, and he said, he's like, "Good for you, man." He's like, "It's good for you showing her that." It doesn't help, by the way, which I could have used a ton of, because an 8-year-old brings nothing to the table when you're like, roll that tire over here, and it's like just falling, and then I'm like at a jack. It just was. I'm trying to hold the tire and get like the nuts on, and I'm just sitting here like, can you see? Can you screw it? Like, it was just like this is not worth it. Which might be a joke too. Might have 2 jokes come out of this podcast that we can get, that it can come into real material.
I'm just imagining you just did the shimmy, getting the wheel on. I mean, who doesn't know that? Honey, can you tell Daddy this is a YouTube video? Don't get off the phone. Help me. Show me. As people drive by, just like,
good
They're
job.
all proud of you.
Yeah,
but they're not helping.
Oh my gosh,
that's so funny.
Okay, so we have 2 questions we ask at the end of every podcast, and you might want to buckle up because these are potent. These are potent potables. Okay, the first question: what is the one thing you want your daughter to know, other than Common Core math?
Yeah, to get that. I want her to be independent, like that. Like, I want her to be independent, self-aware, independent. I don't want her to have to rely on anybody. Like, I don't want her to ever feel like she has to rely on someone. I want her to know that she can do whatever she wants to do, and she can be in charge. And if someone doesn't help her, she can always say, "Doesn't matter. I'll figure it out on my own." So I would imagine that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. All right, last question. What do you want your daughter to say at your funeral?
I want her to say, to make sure I'm dad. I actually had a joke. This day actually do have a joke about this, because I have a joke that the idea, it's kind of a dark. It's like, I don't know if it's dark, but it's like the idea of like, what if you get buried alive? What if being buried alive is a gigantic problem and we have no idea? So,
oh my God,
I know
it's
that's
rampant.
not good, right?
We would have no idea.
No, I mean, it could be. I mean, it's 70% of people, and you're like, I don't know, like, we're not checking. So when I die, I'm like, make sure. And so, cut my head off and bury it. Then another thing. She's about to say a lot of stuff, to be honest. So I'm gonna have a list of stuff. She's gonna go, "He told me I have to make sure he's dead. So I need to really be sure." Yeah. Are you guys positive?
Yes.
So,
yes.
But overall, I hope. I hope that she. I hope the relationship. She has a great relationship you know, that I think we do now, and I hope we always do. And I want her to be, you know, my little buddy and my best friend. And so I hope that it's, you know, like I'm very close with my family.
Hmm.
You know, we're close with my wife's family. Like it's like just that closeness that it's, you know, it's not, you don't want to go up there and be like, I didn't really know my dad or something like that. I want her to be like, no, I knew him like no one else knew him.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I love that.
and so, yeah, that
That's
and
great.
make sure I'm dead.
Yeah, the main
So,
thing.
She's got
is,
to, yeah, I will be like, the main thing is the dad. Make
We
sure
had,
I'm gone.
I don't know if you know Harrison Scott Key. Do you know his books? If you don't, you would
Yeah.
love them. So Harrison was on, and he said exactly the same thing, literally without taking a beat. We asked him that question. He said, you know, what would you want your kids to say at your funeral? And he said, false alarm. And I was
Yeah.
like, you win. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
the
that's
same
pretty
thing as
good.
you.
Yeah.
Like I was
Yeah.
like, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for being on.
Hey,